go there.
Explain to me what an outfall is.
It's where the storm drains, there's drains on the roads, collect, and then discharge into the river.
And this type of money, how many locations would that allow that to cover?
It's a pilot project. We're going to see how well it works with the two cities. So I'm imagining it's only going to cover a couple.
So I live 40 yards from the call, and I'm down there all the time. And so I know from the Sardu Bridge to the Topeka Boulevard Bridge on the north side of the Call River, there's a lot of trash that goes in the river because of encampments. So my question is has the city of Topeka and Lawrence talked about the increase of intake of trash and debris at their plants? Because they do have something there. It's not a netting, it's some type of device that catches or filters that trash when it comes through. And has it increased?
On stormwater drains, I don't believe that they have any type of catchment articles on that.
So stormwater runs into the river, and so if there's trash in the river, then it runs down to the water plant. So is there something that's filtering that trash?
Oh, yeah, there's capture mechanisms as the water gets pulled into the water plant. Yes, but to keep the trash from going into the river to start with is what this is targeted to.
I know, but my question is there been an increase in that intake
of trash coming into the water treatment plant? I do not know that.
So we definitely have a problem with trash, but so what initiated the $50,000 for the cleanup then? If we don't know if there's been an increase in intake of trash, we don't have any prioritized locations where we would set these nettings up. What was this politically done just to say that the department is doing something?
No, it came from the original concept came from some stakeholders that clean up the river, and they've noticed an increase in the river, not so much just at the intakes, but in the river itself. And they were wanting to see, is there some project that we could do to try to keep the trash from getting into the river? So that's where this idea spawned from.
Well, I'm no expert at this, but I definitely know that this isn't coming from the stormwater runoff into the river. It's coming from the embankments of encampments along the way. And I don't mean a little trash, I mean tons of trash. And so it raises question with me, what benefit we'll get out of this with these nettings or captures at these outlets, because I can tell you it's not coming from the water runoff. It's coming from being thrown off the side of the embankments. Have we looked at that to make sure that so stakeholders have came to you, but have we looked at that to make sure that's not the issue?
I'm sure that is part of the issue, but we don't have a mechanism to deal with the trash from the people that are camping along those areas.
So then, I guess my question is, that's where it becomes very political to say that we put money into something to do something. If it's not going to benefit, because we don't know what's flowing into there from stormwater runoff. I watch it when it rains sometimes if I'm out and about. I don't see any trash coming out of those whatever they're called. But I see a lot of trash being dumped off the side of the embankment. I just don't want to throw money at something to say we're doing something when I don't think that that's the problem. And has anybody studied this to see if that's factual, what I'm saying, or if there's any?
I don't know of any studies. What we know is that both those cities that we've contacted are very much interested in pursuing this pilot project because they do see the trash in the streets that do wash into the storm drains, and it ultimately has to go into the river. But what percentage is that versus trash thrown out along the river? I can't tell you what those percentages are.
I would tell my colleagues on the committee that I don't buy that. And any city that you offer money to is going to take that money and utilize it somehow or another, maybe for that. But that trash is not coming from the stormwater runoff. It's coming from the side of the embankments. And I mean, it's tons of it.
Just to follow up with what you're saying, I think until Topeka and Lawrence decides to move their encampments away from the river, the cities are causing the problem and want the taxpayers to clean it up. So if you move the encampments away from where they can get in the river, that 50,000 wouldn't be needed, but it's self-inflicted. And as long as they get paid to let the problem go on, I think you're just gonna see that.
Yeah, and I want to follow up. I want to know what they're catching in the nets, if they're catching in. Because I bet you it's not going to be a lot.
Well,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
yeah. Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't care who answers this question, any of you, but my question is, I know that there's a huge focus this year, particularly on cybersecurity, and I'm wondering if you're seeing in any of your grant programs any applications that deal in any way with security of our systems, any kind of cybersecurity focus at all. And then I have another question to follow up on that. And that is there any consideration to expanding the programs that we provide to our rural communities, to our severely distressed economic urban communities? They share a lot of the same challenges and issues. And I know that we focused a lot on our rural communities, which I love. I think we should. But our economically distressed urban areas often get left out. And so I'm just wondering what you're hearing from those communities and if there is any effort to extend any of those programs to them.
I'll try to answer your cybersecurity question, because this is a big issue with the Environmental Protection Agency, because we have had drinking water facilities that have undergone cyber attacks. And so this is a new initiative with EPA. It's kind of something that we weren't really even thinking about a few years ago, but now because of all the things that happen on the internet and things, it's a new initiative for EPA to work with us and those facilities and the cities that own those facilities to make sure that they are prepared for a cyber attack. Are we ready yet? No. But are we moving in a direction as to assess where we are and what needs to be done? Yes, we are doing that. Now, the other part I'll let you take.
Yes, we did get inquiries ahead of time if cyber protection would qualify for grant applications. And we said to the extent that it impacts water and you are a qualified applicant, then that would be within the parameters of the statute to request that. So we're still in development with all of our vetting criteria and going through. And in terms of urban areas, distressed rural areas, then the statute itself had priorities for small communities, but it didn't only speak to small communities, and it also included the requirement to consider socioeconomic factors and ability to repay. And so there's a broader sort of umbrella provision in there to consider more. So it's not only small communities, but it is heavily targeted toward helping smaller communities. Now, perhaps that smaller community could be a disadvantaged sub-community within an urban area, if that makes sense. Okay.
Representative Cybert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry I was late. I got stuck in the elevator. But anyway, thank you all for your presentation. I got a couple questions and probably talk to somebody afterwards more than in here on impairment charges and water rights. Who would be doing that? Mr. Lewis? On that water, is this the bill we approved last year in the House Water Committee?
Yes.
Didn't see anything in there for watching and monitoring irrigation and stuff like that. Was there something in here on that?
Well, what we talked about today is really $24, and 25. There certainly is more funds for that type of thing. Yes.
Okay. So was there something in there about Could you tell me how many irrigation systems there are? Because I looked in the records and the only thing I could find is the last updated number was in 2017.
You mean total in the state, or?
Yeah, it was 38,000 and some
Well,
odd.
it's about 38,000 total water rights. There's probably about 20 to 22,000 center pivots in the state of Kansas.
Okay.
Yep.
Could you give me some good numbers on that
You bet.
when you get a chance and that? Because, we ran out of water again this year. And the creeks and streams all went dry as soon as they started irrigating at Cheney Lake. I live by Cheney Lake. I don't live on it, but grew up in the bottom of it. So I'm getting a lot of people calling me about they're out of water and their water wells are going dry and they're pumping water on the roads and stuff like that. I'd like to visit with you about some more stuff on that.
You bet.
This might not be the time because.
Yep. Happy to.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir.
Committee, any more questions? Representative Akala?
Who controls the level of water in the Kansas River?
That's a very complicated answer, but the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers owns the federal reservoirs along the Kansas River, and we have contracts for storage within those. So the storage that we have paid for and that we control, the Corps of Engineers cannot use that to make releases for their purposes. So, but the rest of the water in there, the Corps of Engineers follows their master manuals and their guidelines and their mandates and their purposes for how to manage the water, the other water that's in those reservoirs. Now, we work very closely with the Corps of Engineers, like almost on a 24/7, 365 basis. And particularly when there's a flood or a drought, it's a very intensive, constant monitoring with them in our office as to who's going to need what, when do releases need to be made. They calculate how long it takes the water to get down the river to where it's needed. So it's an ongoing dynamic process for how that is managed. And it's co-managed really between the Corps of Engineers and the Water Office. But again, the Corps of Engineers is the senior partner in that partnership, if that kind of helps.
Yeah, I understand that. Is the major source of the level of the river come out of Tuttle Reservoir?
Tuttle is the workhorse reservoir. So managing the Kansas River is largely dependent on how much is in storage in Tuttle. And this gets us to one of our most pressing issues, which is reservoir sedimentation. So reservoirs over time naturally fill up with sediment, which reduces the room for water. And Tuttle Creek Lake is now at half capacity. And so our office is working with the Corps of Engineers. And in fact, later this week, we have the beginning of what I think will be a very profound and helpful partnership with both districts of the Corps of Engineers, both the Tulsa district, which impacts southeast Kansas, and the Kansas City district, which is northeast Kansas, and the Water Office to work together to explore and contribute to and partner in figuring out what will be meaningful ways to address reservoir sedimentation in lake mechanisms. We have a partnership with them now for a pilot project that we are in development for on Tuttle Creek Lake, which is the water injection dredge, which the legislature generously provided half the cost of getting that started. The Corps brought in half the cost. And so there have been ongoing planning meetings and procurement activities, and hopefully those activities will begin late this year or about a year from now.
The reason I ask that question is because, and my time frame may be wrong, but this is my guesstimate. I think it's been about 30 years since I've seen the Kansas River as low as I see it right now. And so is there, in this agreement that we have, is there a minimum amount of water that needs to be kept in the Kansas River?
There are water quality flow standards and there are minimum flow standards that do exist. So it would not be expected that it could ever go completely dry. But for example, if the Corps, if if they decide it meets their needs to not make releases, we can't require them to do that, if that makes sense. But there are water quality flow standards, and there are, like, for example, the water that we would need, that there's a public water supply that needs that, then there would have to be those releases from the supply storage that we pay for.
How often is that checked?
Many times a day.
Is it really?
It depends on the season, it depends on what's happening, but Nate Westrup in our office is constantly monitoring the gauges and the flows at all of our reservoirs.
That's not a physical go out and look, that's more,
There are gauges that exist, and there are core staff that are in various locations. So we don't typically go out to look. They can tell from looking at the gauges and the measurements in real time.
that'll tell you the level of the water within that section of the river.
Mhm.
Is there a way I can get you to send me the level of water of the Kansas River that runs within the city limits?
I would be happy to send you, a more,
I just want to see if there's a,
do you want to see
the
like what the level,
decrease, the
of the
increase?
river is at in a certain period of time?
I'd like to see what it was a year ago, 2 years ago to what it is right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah.
there's not a priority on that, but if you could send it to me, I'd be interested in it.
At the point of Topeka?
Just within the city limits.
Okay.
Or Shawnee County.
There is a gauge. We will be able to let you know the last 3 measurements at this time of year.
You can just email it to me. If I have any questions, I can
Okay.
call whoever's on that email.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Representative Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For whoever, for the 500,000 for the High Plains Aquifer feedlot and dairy water reuse and reclaim, how many farmers is this? How many ranchers is this benefiting? And how many ranchers are in this program?
So we're just, because it's brand new, and this was all kind of approved very late fall, we're in our initial sign up phase for that. So we are, we have a number of interested dairies and feedlots, and the 500,000 is a down payment, so to speak, for some of these systems because they're extremely expensive. But we are seeking applications and those that are interested, and we have those coming in, and we're working with those. But we're at very early stages because this expenditure, these were all, the transfers were approved and whatnot in very late fall.
How many individuals is there room for like different ranches, farms, whatever, to benefit from this?
I mean, individual feed yard owners,
Right.
it depends on what they're requesting and what their needs are. And for one particular operation, this might be a cost shared down payment for them, depending on how expensive their full reuse project might be. For some, this might be a significant development. For others, it may be one of many funding sources that they're going to have.
Thank you. If I may, uh, for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and it may be the same question that you're still in the first phases, but you have 300 or 3,244,000. I don't know what's going on with this. But you have a significant amount here for small town infrastructure support. And I understand that it's a population under 1,000. How many towns or cities are already benefiting from this?
We expect that we'll be able to provide this financial assistance to between 6 and 8 communities.
Thank you. I have more, but
Representative Seibert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for a second time. This will probably be for Mr. Henning. Questions on environment. Got lots of questions.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of a conservation farmer and a no-till farmer and custom applicators too. And, where Roundup is getting to be a big thing in Paraquat, and I got probably 50 some of those containers sitting around my shop that I can't get rid of. My question is, well, nobody will take them if they had Roundup in them.
They're still full.
No, they're empty, but they're contaminated with the plastic. So anyway, my question is, we've dumped a lot on our ground since the mid 90s for no-till, and they're coming out with some pretty tough chemicals now. But you see all these ads for people with Roundup just spraying lawns. Are we doing anything to check and see what that's doing to our water? Because it used to be when we started putting it on, you could get by with 16 ounces of Roundup. Now you're up to 60, and it still doesn't work. Any thoughts on that? Can you give me advice again for my constituents? Because when we irrigate, on dry land, it's one thing. But when we irrigate and you put on 10, 12 inches of water, that takes it right down into the aquifer. Maybe that's why there's no weeds growing in my creek when it runs. But but is it something we need to be looking at, or are we looking at it? Because, the railroads, the grain elevators, the dry cleaners, and the grocery stores, and the oil wells all got shut down with EPA rules for contamination of the soil. And yet we're dumping on all this chemicals on it daily. And our insurance company recommended we get out of it, so we did. But can you help me out here?
Those are some really big questions.
You just answered my question.
The answer is, are we measuring it and looking at it? Yes, we do measure stream quality around the state, and those pesticides and herbicides are one of the things that we do screen for. And if we see an abnormal amount in an area, we'll try to figure out where it's coming from. The good thing is that pesticides and herbicides tend to stay on the soil. So as long as the soil stays in the field and doesn't erode into the stream, it tends to stay on the field. So that's a good thing. So that's why we try to help farmers stabilize their banks, not allow the soil to erode and go down into the stream. And we have programs to help them do that. But if they're approved by the Department of Agriculture for agricultural purposes, then that's outside of our purview.
And I understand that's big business and they got a lot of money, but I'm sure the oil fields and the other people, when they found out they contaminated that ground, and now, I've worked with several filling stations in my area that can't sell their filling station because the contamination from the 60s, that's, 50, 60 years ago. The other question is fertilizers. Again, when we irrigate, we put on 3 to 4 times the amount of fertilizer that we a lot of prairie. I don't know if you're familiar with that name.
Yes, I am.
Okay. They're the first point source of pollution with nitrates in the water and from overuse of irrigation. And I understand there's others that are getting that way too. Is there anything we can do? Because once we lose our water and we can't drink it, it's going to be kind of a pretty tough job. Would you like to talk on a private basis on this?
No, we understand that nitrogen in the groundwater as nitrates is a problem. And there are numerous communities around the state that are seeing the nitrates increase in their water systems. And therefore it requires them to put on treatment, just like Pretty Prairie, and treat that water to drinking water standards. And it's a very expensive process. So no, we understand it. We know it. The cities that we've contacted, the cities know that they're seeing increased nitrates in their wells. But again, it's a cause and effect thing. The farmer who's putting on the nitrogen probably doesn't really see the nitrates going up in the city's wells. So we are trying to educate on that line. I know conservation districts and precision farming is they're trying to make an inroad there where you don't put on 3 times what you need. And what's helped that is the cost of fertilizer has gone so expensive now that a lot of the farmers are starting to pull back from that over application just from a cost basis. So do I have a magic answer for you? No, I do not. But we do study the herbicides, pesticides in the surface water, and most cities do understand the issue around nitrates in groundwater because they want to prevent those big treatment systems on their plants.
Well, and my fear is with lawsuits that they like the Pretty Prairie one, they tied it to agriculture. And Senator Brown, back when he was in Washington, helped us delete that problem, remember? And they did last year or two put it reverse osmosis or something in Pretty Prairie. And, you know, they got some funding, but this started clear back when he was still a U.S. Senator. And so we start looking at that. But my question is too, what are we doing to slow that down? Or is anything we're doing to slow that down other than education, like you said, because it's a serious issue. And again, we see that, you know, and
So we do have a program that tries to help those municipalities where they're seeing increased nitrates in their wells by implementing best management practices around their well field so that you're not fertilizing right next to a drinking water well, kind of moving them away. But once the nitrates get into the groundwater, they move with the groundwater, and so therefore, you could have applied the fertilizer on a quarter section 2 miles away, and over time that water has migrated into the field. But it it's something I can't tell you there's a great answer for, because applying fertilizer on farm field is an accepted practice. So
that's exactly my point, because we learned from the past on those other things. You know, the people in the municipalities are complaining they didn't cause the problem, and yet they're paying for the problem. That's, if you want to be quite precise, that's the question in mind. What if they come back and find out that it's the farmer's fault because he overused the water and overdid this? I'd like to talk to you more about the fertilizers, or not the fertilizer, but the Roundup sticking in the ground. That's I never heard that, but thank you. I don't want to take up the time, but I think this is a huge issue that we got to address, because it's similar to the water and the trash in the water with who's living on the side of the river, you know. And same way at Cheney Lake, you know, it's down, so everybody's partying. And yeah, I can go down there and show you pictures where they just dump trash like you're out of style, you know. But I know you guys got a tough job, but I appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Committee? Connie, I've got a couple of questions for you. On the $3 million for dam construction and rehabilitation, it says that took care of 20 projects. Is that what it says here, or am I talking to the wrong person?
I think that's a question for Earl.
Good job, Connie.
It's like wrestling here with tag team. So that's a projection. We look at what the historic cost share has been, and so it's in that range. We believe we get about 20 of those projects. Yes.
Is that mostly watersheds, or what kind of dams are you hitting?
It'd be a mix. Historically, it's been primarily watersheds, but a lot of the dams that we see have problems that have chronic problems, or other types of dams, whether they're city, county, or even homeowners association or private dams, have historically not been eligible. But those are problems that continue to hang around. So we're trying to bring those into as options as well.
Maybe one more question.
You bet.
So over here for a Water Technical Assistance Fund summary, there was 122 applications submitted for 56 million. Are those applications statewide? If you look at the map of Kansas, are there people looking for all over the state for this kind of money? Connie?
We receive, I can't speak specifically about the technical assistance applications because I haven't personally vetted through all of them yet, but they've come from all over the place. We've had applications from all across the state. So that's, one question that we have with so great a need and so small a fund. How will we make the decisions that we will? And the statute gives us a lot of guidance for that. But yeah, the applications have come from all over the place, from western Kansas, border to border.
So this, I hear that, but you know, in my area, you know, Valley Falls keeps having trouble with Perry being low on water, keeping their towns alive, and same way in Osage County. And then, you know, down around Vito Junction, they're trying to put in a chip factory, and Coffee County wants water from another county to give up their water rights. Well, they're not. That's not happening so fast as you might understand. So uh, I don't see where you'll ever get enough money. Your typical problem would be what, like in a small town of 200 or less, like maybe Dover or like Eskridge, or what would they be asking for, you think?
I really couldn't speak to that. We haven't yet created a matrix that would identify any averages at this point. But I think what's very clear is that there is a real need, and the statute really focuses on smaller communities, whether they're part of a larger community or rural areas. But it recognizes there is a need that communities need help paying for. And we created the grants to have no cost share for that very purpose. We wanted the money accessible and available because the communities that can't afford to get in the game can't afford a cost share. So it's all about getting help as much as we can. Unfortunately, the need is just tremendous. These kind of programs haven't existed, so infrastructure has gone into disrepair. And as you know, with the there's a cost to deferred maintenance. So the longer you wait,
Candace, aren't you? Go ahead and say it, Connie. No.
so the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets. And so we're kind of playing catch up on some of this, but yep.
So maybe I'm just asking if the committee would want to see this, but I'd like to see the 122 applications and where they're from, and same way with the project grant project. So if you know some are in your district, you might kind of be able to check on them or talk to them or see. You would, if you know what we're asking for, Connie. So like a list of the 122 applications for the technical support, and maybe a list of the 187 applications for the water
Like
project summary.
a list of the applicants. Okay.
Just so kind of see where they're at. And maybe if we can just send them to Josh, and he will make sure the committee gets a list when you get time.
Yeah, we'd be happy to send you a list of applicants.
Representative Garber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Connie, when they put in their application, did they put a cost with it, what they estimated?
Yes, they're supposed to submit an estimated cost. They're supposed to submit a timeline, and with the projects fund, they're also supposed to be submitting a plan. Obviously, with the technical assistance, you don't have a project plan yet.
So that's where the 56 million and 120 million came from. You added all those costs up to get that 56 million.
Well, the amount that people requested, that's what they requested. Yeah, those are those totals.
Thank you.
Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree. I think it would be helpful for the committee to have an idea of those applications. I think I'm more interested in like what they're applying for, just to give me a sense of like what the need is and what they are asking for funds. And then the other thing, I know that some of the bill money, the federal infrastructure dollars, it also helps for this infrastructure, helps for all infrastructure, not just roads and bridges. But are we seeing movement to try to access some of those federal dollars through bill and IILJA?
Very good. Those acronyms kind of get tricky. We have been in conversations with the Department of Transportation and the Infrastructure Hub for the very purpose of trying to catch overlap. For example, if our programs can't fund something, maybe theirs can. The Build Kansas Fund, which is it's a state mechanism, state funded mechanism to provide the cost share, to provide the initial get in the game. But that is targeted toward the federal money, right? So our projects are more state-based. However, The projects fund that we have, that can be used as cost share for another grant, whether it's federal or private or whatever. So that's one use of it. Another use that I did not mention is that the statute allows the projects grants to be used to pay down outstanding loan debts to KDHE under two specific loan programs. And there are parameters for, basically, if you're a smaller community, you can get a higher percentage of your loan outstanding balance paid for. But you have to have, your project has to be complete. You have to have been making payments for 5 years. There are a few, but that is another thing that is a little bit different in the sense that it's a loan payoff opportunity. So,
Yeah, I've got a question for you, Leo. I'm glad you're coming up. Come on up.
I just want to follow up with Representative Curtis, which is we do receive the bill funding for SRF loans. And we have received, I don't know, 200 million, 400 million. So, so those loans come from EPA to us, that money does. And some of that money is forgivable. So we'll loan out 10 million, but we'll forgive 5 million of the loan. And then some of it is 100% forgivable. So we actually loan it out 10 million and they get 10 million. So it just depends on what the purpose of the money that they're getting is, because it comes to us in 4 different buckets for then clean water, and then which is your wastewater treatment plants, and then for drinking water. So there's buckets that they have to fit into. But if you can give me some time during our normal budget presentation, I'm going to give you 4 or 5 slides just on the BIL money that KDHE received. All right.
This is kind of maybe for you and Representative Alcala on that $50,000. If the cities that are causing the problem of encouraging homeless camps on the river banks, is there, can you think of anything that maybe hold them a little more responsible, or maybe find some way of would that be something would have to be something passed through here, or how would any easy suggestions? I mean, the problem's not going to get any smaller.
And I don't have a recommendation on how to deal with the homeless that are living along the streams. I mean, my authorities are pretty limited. I can have some flexibility there, but I don't have a way to relocate people or
Environmental something you could imply to get this moved.
I don't believe so. I'll ask my attorney, but those authorities just don't lie within the state division of environment.
I inquired a year ago, maybe, or maybe a little longer than that. And so what the department told me, it was a city issue, and so it never did get addressed. That's what didn't set good with me during that time. I would say just not give the money. I really think we're throwing money away for a reason that's not the cause.
Thank you, Leo. Committee, any more questions? Tomorrow, we're going to meet with Commerce and go over the Apex program and the World Cup. So if you think this was money today, this was pencil dust. So anyway, if that's it, we're adjourned.